We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Innocent Words. Daddy, why does Mommy call you her biggest mistake when you're not here? Dominic Foster froze, his hand hovering over the storybook he'd been about to read to his daughter, Lily. The 10-year-old's wide hazel eyes, so much like his own, gazed up at him expectantly, unaware of how her innocent question had just shattered his world. When did you hear Mommy say that, sweetheart? He managed, keeping his voice steady despite the sudden hollowness in his chest. Last week when she was talking to Uncle Patrick on the phone. Lily frowned. She was laughing, but it didn't sound like a happy laugh. It sounded like the laugh she does at your boss's jokes at Christmas parties. Dominic nodded slowly, processing this information while maintaining his composure. Patrick, his wife's brother, the man who'd been best man at their wedding 12 years ago. I'm sure Mommy was just joking, he said, forcing a smile. Grown-ups sometimes make silly jokes that don't really mean anything. Lily seemed satisfied with this explanation, but Dominic's mind was racing. He and Vanessa had been having problems, sure. Their marriage had cooled over the past year. Physical intimacy had become rare, conversations superficial. He'd attributed it to the stress of his new position at the architectural firm and her promotion to hospital administration. They were both busy, tired. It was just a phase. But biggest mistake. After finishing Lily's bedtime story and kissing her goodnight, Dominic made his way downstairs. The house was quiet. Vanessa was working late again, the third time this week. She'd texted that a budget crisis needed her immediate attention. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat in the darkness of their kitchen. The home they'd rebuilt together after the fire 5 years ago, when they'd lost almost everything. The insurance had barely covered half the reconstruction costs, but they'd pushed through, taking out loans, working overtime. Vanessa had been his rock then. What had changed? Dominic took a long sip, remembering how they'd met 15 years ago. He'd been finishing his architectural degree, working nights as a bouncer at a downtown club. Vanessa, a stunning pre-med student with ambition that matched his own, had walked past the line with her friends. Their eyes had met, and something had clicked. 3 years later, they were married. Their early years had been a struggle, but filled with love. They'd scrimped and saved, supported each other through career setbacks and triumphs. When Lily was born, he'd thought their bond unbreakable. He glanced at the time, 11:42 p.m. Vanessa had said she'd be home by 10. Dominic pulled out his phone, intending to call her, then stopped. Instead, he opened their shared family location app. The dot representing Vanessa's phone wasn't at St. Mary's Hospital. It was across town, in a residential neighborhood he didn't recognize. Something cold settled in his stomach. Rather than confronting her immediately, Dominic decided to wait and watch. He needed more information before jumping to conclusions. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. A colleague's house for an emergency meeting. A friend in need. The front door opened at 12:37 a.m. Vanessa entered, looking tired but strangely energized. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled, her lipstick faded. Budget crisis resolved? Dominic asked casually. Vanessa startled slightly. Oh, you're still up? Yes, finally. Thompson was being impossible about the radiology department allocations. She set down her purse and kicked off her heels. I'm exhausted. Going to take a quick shower and crash. Dominic nodded, noting how she avoided his eyes. I'll be up in a few. After her shower, Vanessa was already pretending to be asleep when he entered their bedroom. Dominic lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing pattern, too irregular for someone truly asleep. The next morning, while Vanessa took Lily to school, Dominic called his office and took a personal day. For the first time in their marriage, he decided to do something he'd never considered before: investigate his wife. He started with their shared laptop. Vanessa rarely deleted her browsing history. They'd never had secrets before. What he found made his blood run cold. Searches from the past 3 months. How to file for divorce in Illinois. Hidden assets during divorce. How to get full custody in divorce. Divorcing a controlling husband. Dominic sat back, stunned. Controlling? He'd never considered himself controlling. They made decisions together. At least he thought they did. Further searches revealed visits to apartment rental sites, consultations with divorce attorneys, and most disturbing of all, searches about moving out of state with a child after divorce. She was planning to take Lily. Fighting the urge to confront her immediately, Dominic dug deeper. Their banking records showed something even more alarming. Vanessa had been siphoning money from their joint account into a private account he knew nothing about. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. Over $40,000 had disappeared in the past 6 months. Money they'd been saving for Lily's college. Money they discussed investing in their future together. As the day progressed, Dominic's shock transformed into icy determination. He needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal before making his next move. Because now, it wasn't just about their marriage. It was about protecting his daughter and everything he'd worked for. His phone pinged with a location alert. Vanessa had left work early. Again, her location showed somewhere other than the hospital. This time, he decided to see for himself. Chapter 2: The Unraveling. The residential address where Vanessa's phone had been locating belonged to a modern townhouse in an upscale neighborhood. Dominic parked his car at a discreet distance and waited. At 4:37 p.m., his wife emerged from the front door. She wasn't alone. The air left Dominic's lungs as he watched his brother, Neil, follow her outside. Neil, younger by 3 years, always living in Dominic's shadow, always envious of his accomplishments. The same brother who'd lost his architectural license 2 years ago after a scandal involving misappropriated client funds. The brother Dominic had defended to the firm's partners, vouching for his character. They didn't embrace or kiss outside. Too careful for that, but the intimacy between them was unmistakable in their body language. The way Neil's hand lingered on Vanessa's lower back. The familiar way she adjusted his collar. Dominic's phone camera captured it all from a distance. Evidence. That night, after tucking Lily in, he returned to their laptop while Vanessa was soaking in the bath. What he found in her email exchanges with Neil made him physically ill. Dom's completely oblivious. He's so wrapped up in his precious career, he doesn't even see what's happening right under his nose. Once the divorce is final, we'll have enough to start over somewhere new. Somewhere he can't interfere. I've been talking to a firm in Colorado. Lily will adjust. Children are resilient. And honestly, she needs a father figure who's actually present. The messages dated back 14 months, around the time Neil had come to stay with them after losing his license and apartment. Dominic had offered his brother a place to stay while he got back on his feet. Instead, Neil had been systematically destroying Dominic's marriage and plotting to take his daughter away. The bathroom door opened, and Dominic quickly closed the laptop. Vanessa entered their bedroom wrapped in a towel, her damp hair framing her face. For a moment, he saw the woman he'd fallen in love with, before the image was corrupted by what he now knew. "You're quiet tonight," she observed, selecting night clothes from her drawer. "Just thinking about work," he lied. "The Westlake project is hitting some snags. You'll figure it out. You always do." Her words were supportive, but her tone held something else. Indifference, perhaps even contempt. "I invited Neil over for dinner tomorrow," Dominic said casually. It's been a while since he's seen Lily. Vanessa froze momentarily before continuing to dress. "Oh, I thought he was busy with that new job in Evanston." Another lie. Neil had told them he'd found work with a small firm in Evanston. The truth, as Dominic had discovered today, was that Neil wasn't employed at all. He was living off money Vanessa had been funneling to him. Their money. "He said he could make time," Dominic replied. "Family's important, right?" Vanessa smiled tightly. "Of course. I'll pick up some steaks on my way home." That night, Dominic lay awake beside his sleeping wife, formulating his plan. Confronting them immediately would be satisfying, but strategically unwise. They'd clearly been planning this for months. He needed time to protect himself, to protect Lily. The next day, Dominic met with a divorce attorney of his own, Maxwell Sloan, a shark known for his ruthless efficiency. Sloan listened carefully to Dominic's situation, reviewing the evidence he'd gathered. "They've given you a significant advantage by plotting this while still in the marital home, using shared resources," Sloan explained. The financial diversion alone is actionable. But we need more. What do you suggest? Dominic asked. Don't confront them. Not yet. Document everything. Get access to all financial records. If they've been careless enough to leave these trails, there may be more we can use. Sloan leaned forward. How much do you want to fight for? Everything, Dominic replied without hesitation. My daughter, my home, everything I've built. Then we need to be methodical and patient. Sloan outlined a strategy that made Dominic's stomach turn, but he recognized its effectiveness. For the next 6 weeks, Dominic lived a double life. On the surface, he was the same hard-working husband and devoted father. He attended Lily's soccer games, brought Vanessa flowers, even invited Neil over for family dinners, watching with disgusted fascination as his wife and brother maintained their charade. Behind this facade, he was meticulously building his case, following Sloan's guidance. He hired a private investigator who documented Vanessa's and Neil's meetings. He secretly recorded conversations where Vanessa demeaned him to friends. He carefully tracked the continuing financial diversions. Most critically, he spent more time with Lily, documenting his involvement in her daily life, taking her to doctor's appointments, attending parent-teacher conferences, establishing an undeniable pattern of engaged parenting, all while saying nothing about what he knew. Chapter 3. The Serpent's Nest. The dinner with Neil proved excruciating but enlightening. Dominic observed every subtle exchange between his wife and brother with new awareness. The lingering glances, the inside jokes, the way they both checked their phones simultaneously when messages arrived. How's the new job treating you? Dominic asked Neil over dessert, his tone perfectly casual. Neil took a sip of wine before answering. It's good. Smaller firm, but they appreciate my expertise. Actually handling a commercial project downtown now. Another lie. The PI had confirmed Neil hadn't worked in months. We should catch up more, Dominic suggested. Grab lunch sometime. Like we used to. Something flickered in Neil's eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or wariness. Definitely. Been too long. After Neil left, Vanessa seemed tense. That was nice, she said mechanically, loading the dishwasher. Lily always loves seeing her uncle. Family's everything, Dominic replied, watching her hands tremble slightly. That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, Dominic slipped into the guest bathroom with her phone. He'd observe her passcode during dinner. Inside, he found what he expected. Hundreds of messages between her and Neil, planning their future, disparaging Dominic, strategizing the divorce. More damning were messages to Vanessa's friend Teresa, a social worker. I need your professional opinion. Would it help the custody case if I documented Dom's anger issues? He doesn't actually have any, but I could start keeping a journal. The response had been immediate. Don't fabricate evidence. That'll backfire spectacularly if discovered. Judges hate that. Dominic photographed the exchanges, then carefully returned Vanessa's phone to her nightstand. A cold rage had replaced his initial heartbreak. They weren't just planning to leave him. They were plotting to destroy him, to take his daughter, to rewrite the narrative of who he was. As the weeks progressed, Dominic expanded his investigation. He discovered that Neil had convinced Vanessa to invest in a business opportunity. $25,000 of their savings transferred to an LLC that existed only on paper. The money had actually gone toward a down payment on a house in Boulder, Colorado, where they apparently planned to relocate. He learned that Vanessa had been telling friends and colleagues carefully crafted stories about their marriage, painting Dominic as emotionally distant, occasionally volatile, increasingly controlling, setting the stage for her departure while preserving her image. Most sickeningly, he discovered that Neil had been building a relationship with Lily behind his back, taking her for ice cream after school when Vanessa arranged it, telling her stories about Colorado and how much she'd love the mountains, quietly undermining Dominic's role in her life. Through it all, Dominic maintained his facade. He even initiated sex with Vanessa twice, encounters she couldn't reasonably refuse without raising suspicion, though her reluctance was palpable. Afterward, he'd seen her texting Neil from the bathroom, presumably explaining, apologizing. The performance was exhausting but necessary. Each day brought new revelations, new betrayals to process while smiling across the breakfast table, asking about her day, discussing Lily's school projects. During this time, Dominic reconnected with an old friend from college, Meredith Weiss, now a forensic accountant. Without revealing the full situation, he asked her to review some concerning transactions he'd noticed in their accounts. Meredith's analysis went beyond what Dominic had already discovered. She found evidence that Vanessa had been systematically inflating their tax deductions for years, putting them at risk for an audit. She also identified unusual patterns suggesting Vanessa might have been diverting funds even longer than he'd realized. Dom, whoever's doing this isn't just taking money. They're creating serious liability for you, Meredith warned. As the primary breadwinner whose name is on most of these accounts, you'd be the one facing consequences. This revelation accelerated Dominic's timeline. With Sloane's guidance, he began quietly securing his assets, documenting the fraudulent activity while ensuring he maintained clean hands. He opened new accounts in his name only, transferred his personal belongings of value to a secure storage unit, and backed up all evidence to servers Vanessa couldn't access. He also started recording his interactions with Lily, bedtime stories, homework help, playground visits, creating an undeniable record of his role as a loving, involved father. 5 weeks into his silent vigil, the expected trigger finally came. Dominic returned from work to find Vanessa looking resolute, Lily nowhere to be seen. "She's at my mother's for the night," Vanessa said without preamble. "We need to talk." Dominic set down his briefcase. "Sounds serious." "I'm not happy, Dom. Haven't been for a long time." Her delivery sounded rehearsed, emotionless. "I think we need to consider separating." He nodded slowly, maintaining his bewildered expression. "This seems sudden. Is there someone else?" The flash of panic in her eyes was almost satisfying. "No, this is about us, our relationship. We've grown apart." "I see." He sat heavily on the couch, playing his role. "Can we try counseling? For Lily's sake, if nothing else." "I've been in individual therapy for months," she countered. "My therapist thinks a clean break will be healthier for everyone, including Lily." Another lie. There was no therapist, just Neil, coaching her through this conversation. "I need time to process this," Dominic said, his voice deliberately shaky. Vanessa nodded, her rehearsed compassion almost convincing. "Take whatever time you need, but I've made my decision." 1 week later, right on schedule, Dominic was served divorce papers at his office, timed, he was certain, to maximize his professional embarrassment. The petition painted him as a neglectful husband and father, requested primary custody for Vanessa with reasonable visitation for him, and demanded substantial alimony despite her comparable salary. That evening, following Sloane's instructions, Dominic didn't return home. Instead, he checked into a hotel and waited for the panic calls from Vanessa. "Where are you?" "Lily's asking for you," she demanded when he finally answered. "I needed space after being blindsided today," he replied calmly. "The allegations in those papers, they're not just seeking divorce, Vanessa. They're character assassination." "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped. "It's standard language." "Is asking for full custody of our daughter standard language?" Her voice softened to the manipulative tone he now recognized. "Dom, be reasonable. With your work schedule, you know Lily needs stability." "We'll see what the judge thinks," he answered before hanging up. The next morning, Dominic arrived at the offices of Harwood and Sloane with a thumb drive containing 6 weeks of meticulously gathered evidence. Maxwell Sloane reviewed it with increasing interest. "They made a critical error serving you first with these outlandish claims," Sloane noted. "It gives us the perfect opening for our counterpetition." Dominic nodded grimly. "When do we file?" "Tomorrow morning. I want Vanessa's lawyer to have exactly 1 day to feel smug." Sloane's thin smile held no warmth. "By this time tomorrow, he'll be physically ill when he sees what's coming." Chapter 4, Counterstrike. Dominic watched from across the street as a courier delivered their counterpetition to the offices of Gregory Walsh, Vanessa's attorney. Through the glass frontage, he could see the moment the documents were handed to Walsh himself, a florid man with an expensive suit and a reputation for showmanship rather than substance. The initial filing had been calculating in its timing. Sloan had arranged for it to arrive at 4:45 p.m. on Friday, giving Walsh just enough time to review the explosive contents, but not enough time to formulate a coherent response before the weekend. Dominic's counterpetition wasn't just a response. It was a comprehensive dismantling of Vanessa's narrative. It included forensic financial reports documenting Vanessa's systematic diversion of marital assets, timestamped location data showing her whereabouts during claimed work emergencies, transcripts of recorded conversations between Vanessa and friends discussing her plans, text and email exchanges between Vanessa and Neil dating back 14 months, documentation of fraudulent tax filings that put the family at legal risk, evidence of Vanessa and Neil's planned relocation to Colorado, a child psychologist's preliminary assessment of Lily's strong attachment to Dominic, character statement from Lily's teachers, coaches, and parents of her friends attesting to Dominic's active involvement in her life. Most devastating was the inclusion of timestamped video showing Neil and Vanessa discussing their plans to make Dom look unstable to strengthen their custody case. As expected, Walsh called Sloan within 30 minutes of receiving the counterpetition. "Your client has been conducting illegal surveillance," Walsh blustered, his voice so loud that Dominic could hear him through Sloan's speakerphone. "My client has been documenting activities occurring in his own home, on devices purchased with marital funds, and in public spaces," Sloan replied coolly. "Nothing illegal about that, Greg. These accusations are fully supported by evidence, unlike the fictional narrative in your filing." Sloan's tone remained measured. "I suggest you advise your client to withdraw her petition before this becomes even more embarrassing. This is harassment." "No, Greg. Harassment would be releasing the recording where your client discusses fabricating abuse allegations with her paramour, who happens to be my client's brother. That would be harassment." Sloan paused. "And possibly criminal." The line went silent before Walsh spoke again, his voice noticeably subdued. "I'll need to consult with my client." "Of course. We'll expect your response by Monday noon." Sloan ended the call and turned to Dominic. "Now we wait." The weekend passed in excruciating slowness. Dominic remained at his hotel, fielding increasingly frantic texts and calls from Vanessa. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Think about what this will do to Lily." He responded minimally, following Sloan's advice. "All communication should go through our attorneys now." On Sunday evening, Neil called. Dominic let it go to voicemail. "Dom, it's me. Look, things have gotten complicated, but we're still brothers. There are two sides to every story. Call me back, man. We can work this out without destroying the family." Dominic listened to the message twice, marveling at his brother's audacity. The man who had systematically betrayed him, planned to take his daughter, and conspired to destroy his reputation was now appealing to family loyalty. Monday arrived with the expected call from Sloan. Walsh wanted a meeting. Off the record, all parties present. Sloan sounded satisfied. "They're scared." Good. Dominic had moved beyond anger to a cold, focused clarity. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." "My office." Sloan paused. "You should know. They've asked if Neil can attend." Dominic considered this. "Perfect. I want to see his face." The meeting was set for 10 a.m. Dominic arrived early, dressed in his best suit, projecting calm authority despite the storm of emotions beneath. Sloan greeted him with uncharacteristic warmth. "Remember, no matter what they say or how they try to provoke you, maintain your composure," Sloan advised. "Your self-control is your greatest weapon now." At precisely 10, Walsh arrived with Vanessa and Neil in tow. Vanessa looked like she hadn't slept, her usual polished appearance frayed at the edges. Neil couldn't meet Dominic's eyes. "Before we begin," Walsh started, "I want to emphasize that this is an informal discussion. Nothing said here is binding." "Understood," Sloan replied. "Though I should mention that my client has authorized me to record this meeting for his records." Walsh looked uncomfortable but nodded. They settled around the conference table, Dominic and Sloan on one side, the others facing them. "Mr. Foster," Walsh began, addressing Dominic directly, Despite the contentious nature of the current filings, we believe there's still opportunity for an amicable resolution. Dominic remained silent, waiting. My client is willing to withdraw certain claims in her petition in exchange for a more equitable distribution of assets and a reasonable custody arrangement. Sloan smiled thinly. Define equitable and reasonable. Walsh cleared his throat. 50-50 asset division and joint custody, with Lily's primary residence remaining with her mother. No. Dominic spoke for the first time, his voice steady. Vanessa leaned forward. Dom, be sensible. This fighting isn't good for anyone, especially Lily. You should have considered that before you and my brother planned to take her to Colorado. Dominic's gaze was unflinching. Before you diverted our daughter's college fund. Before you discussed fabricating abuse allegations. Neil finally spoke. It wasn't like that, Dom. You're twisting things. Am I? Dominic slid a folder across the table. These are transcripts of your conversations. Verbatim. Page 16 might interest you particularly. Walsh intercepted the folder, scanning the contents with increasing alarm. He whispered something to Vanessa, whose face blanched. Here's what's going to happen. Dominic continued calmly. Vanessa will withdraw her petition entirely. We will file an uncontested divorce with terms that I dictate. I will retain primary custody of Lily. Vanessa will have visitation rights contingent upon her remaining within 50 miles of our current residence. That's outrageous, Walsh sputtered. I'm not finished. Dominic's voice remained measured. Vanessa will return all diverted funds to our joint accounts before distribution. She will assume full responsibility for any tax liabilities resulting from her fraudulent filings. And she will relinquish any claim to our home. Or what? Vanessa demanded, color returning to her face. Or we proceed to court with the full evidence package. Dominic gestured to the much thicker folder Sloan placed on the table, including the criminal implications. You put Lily through that, Vanessa challenged. I'm protecting Lily, Dominic corrected. From parents who conspire to use her as a pawn. From a mother willing to fabricate abuse allegations. From an uncle who encourages her mother to commit fraud. Neil stood abruptly. This is bullshit. You can't prove. Actually, Sloan interjected, we can prove all of it. The question is whether we need to do so publicly. The implied threat hung in the air. Walsh whispered urgently to Vanessa, who appeared increasingly distressed. You have until Friday to accept these terms, Dominic concluded, standing. After that, we proceed to full discovery and trial. As they left the conference room, Dominic heard Neil's voice behind him. You smug bastard. You think you've won? Dominic turned slowly. No, Neil. I think you and Vanessa lost the moment you decided to betray me. I'm just establishing the cost. Chapter 5. Ripples and Waves. The fallout from a meeting was immediate and far-reaching. By Wednesday, rumors had spread through their social circle. Friends called Dominic with confused questions. Vanessa's parents, who had always treated Dominic like a son, left a heartbroken voicemail asking what was happening. Neil's former colleagues contacted Dominic expressing shock at the brothers' estrangement. Through it all, Dominic maintained strict privacy about the specifics, simply stating that personal matters are being handled through appropriate channels. This measured response contrasted sharply with Vanessa's emotional outbursts to friends and family, painting herself as the victim of Dominic's vengeful obsession and controlling behavior. The most difficult aspect was Lily. During his scheduled time with her, Dominic noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Excessive politeness, careful questions, an underlying anxiety that broke his heart. Are you and Mommy getting a divorce? She asked during their pizza dinner, her voice small. Dominic set down his slice and took her hand. Yes, sweetheart. I'm sorry, but we are. Her lower lip trembled. Is it because of what I told you? About Mommy calling you a mistake? Absolutely not, Dominic said firmly. What's happening between Mommy and me is grown-up stuff that started long before that. None of this is your fault. Not one bit. Uncle Neil says that sometimes daddies get really angry during divorces, and that's why kids have to go live with their mommies. The calculated manipulation in this statement made Dominic's blood boil, but he kept his expression gentle. That's not true for us. I'm not angry at you, not ever. And we don't know yet exactly how things will work with where you'll live. But I promise you'll always have your room at home with me. Mommy says we might move to Colorado with Uncle Neil. She says they have better schools there. Dominic took a measured breath. Do you want to move to Colorado, Lily? She shook her head emphatically. No, my friends are here. And you're here. Then I promise you won't have to move. It was a promise Dominic intended to keep at any cost. That evening, after returning Lily to Vanessa, who refused to make eye contact with him, Dominic received an unexpected visit from Vanessa's father, Richard Montgomery. Richard had been a circuit court judge before retirement, and Dominic had always respected his principled, straightforward nature. I need to understand what's happening, Richard said as Dominic let him in. Vanessa tells one story. Neighborhood gossip suggests another. I want the truth. Dominic poured them both scotch. I can't discuss specifics while legal proceedings are ongoing. Cut the crap, son. Richard's weathered face showed both anger and pain. This is family. My daughter and my granddaughter are involved. Level with me. After a long moment, Dominic opened his laptop. I can't tell you, but I can show you. For the next hour, Richard reviewed selected evidence, enough to understand the situation without delving into the most intimate betrayals. As he read, his expression shifted from skepticism to shock to profound disappointment. I didn't raise her to be this person, he finally said, his voice hollow. None of us are who we thought we were, Dominic replied quietly. I never imagined being this person either, gathering evidence against my wife, preparing for court battles over my daughter. Richard closed the laptop. What do you want, Dom? Really want? To protect Lily. To keep what I've built. To not be erased from my daughter's life. The older man nodded slowly. I'll talk to Vanessa. Not about what I've seen. She wouldn't forgive that breach, but about the reality of her situation. He stood to leave. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserve better from my daughter. And from that brother of yours. The next morning, Dominic received a text from Vanessa. We need to talk. Just us. No lawyers. Following Sloane's advice, Dominic agreed to meet in a public place, a coffee shop downtown. Vanessa was already waiting when he arrived, looking both defiant and frightened. My father came to see me last night, she began without preamble. Dominic sipped his coffee. He came to see me too. He wouldn't tell me what you showed him, but he made it clear my legal position is precarious. Her voice hardened. That was a low blow, involving my parents. I didn't involve them. You did that when you started lying to them about our marriage. Dominic set down his cup. What do you want, Vanessa? I want this to stop before it destroys everyone, before it damages Lily permanently. She leaned forward. I'm willing to compromise. Joint custody. Equal time. I'll stay in Chicago. And Neil. Her hesitation told him everything. That's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. Dominic's voice remained calm. You chose my brother over our family. You plotted to take my daughter across the country. You stole from our accounts. You considered fabricating abuse allegations. Those decisions have consequences. You're punishing me for falling in love, Vanessa countered. I'm holding you accountable for betrayal, theft, and conspiracy. Dominic stood. The terms I offered remain on the table until tomorrow. After that, we proceed to court. You'll regret this, Dom. Her voice trembled with rage. You think you have it all figured out, but you haven't seen what I'm capable of when cornered. Dominic looked at her, truly looked at the woman he'd loved for 15 years, the mother of his child, and felt nothing but a profound, aching sadness. That's where you're wrong, Vanessa. I've seen exactly what you're capable of. That's why we're here. Friday morning brought no acceptance of terms. Instead, Dominic received news from Sloane that Vanessa had fired Walsh and hired Belinda Morris, a notoriously aggressive divorce attorney known for her scorched earth approach. They're choosing war, Sloane confirmed, sounding almost pleased at the challenge. Morris has requested an emergency hearing for temporary custody, claiming you've been intimidating and coercing Vanessa. Dominic wasn't surprised. What's our counter move? We were prepared for this. The judge assigned to your case is Eleanor West. She has zero tolerance for false allegations or parental alienation. We file our full evidence package this afternoon. Request a guardian ad litem for Lily immediately. and move for temporary primary custody for you based on Vanessa's demonstrated intent to relocate the child without consent. By Friday evening, the battlefield was set. What had begun as a private betrayal was about to become a public spectacle, exactly what Dominic had hoped to avoid for Lily's sake. As he was preparing dinner for himself in the quiet of his hotel room, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Foster? This is Detective Laurel Martinez with Chicago PD. We need to discuss a complaint that's been filed against you." Chapter 6, Darkness Visible. Complaint, Dominic repeated, his mind racing through possibilities. "Yes, sir. Allegations of threatening behavior and harassment," Detective Martinez explained. "Standard procedure is to discuss this in person. Are you available to come to the station tomorrow morning?" Dominic immediately called Sloan, who arranged for a criminal defense attorney, Victoria Chun, to accompany him. "This is a classic desperation move," Chun explained as they drove to the police station the next morning. "Your wife's new attorney likely suggested filing a police report to support their emergency custody petition. Creates a paper trail they can reference even if the complaint goes nowhere." Detective Martinez turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who seemed unimpressed by the situation. "I'll be direct, Mr. Foster. Your wife claims you've been sending threatening messages, surveilling her movements, and creating a climate of fear that's affecting your daughter." Victoria Chin spoke before Dominic could respond. "My client categorically denies these allegations. We believe they constitute malicious prosecution, especially given the timing coinciding with divorce proceedings." "That's for the courts to decide," Martinez replied evenly. "I'm just gathering information." "Then you should know that Mr. Foster has obtained a temporary restraining order against his brother, Neil Foster, based on documented threats." Chun slid a copy across the table. "Additionally, Mrs. Foster has been systematically diverting marital assets and planning to leave the state with their daughter, as evidenced by these financial records and communications." Martinez reviewed the documents with a neutral expression. "This is messy. Divorce often is," Chin agreed. "But only one party here has actual evidence supporting their claims." After 2 hours of questioning and statement-taking, Martinez concluded the interview. "Based on what I've seen, we're not pursuing charges at this time. This appears to be a civil matter for family court." Outside the station, Dominic exhaled heavily. "Thank you." Chin nodded briskly. "They were fishing, hoping you'd say something incriminating. But this isn't over. Expect more tactics like this." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, as the initial hearing approached, Dominic weathered a storm of escalating attacks. Vanessa changed the locks on their home, forcing him to get a court order for access to his own possessions. Neil filed a countersuit claiming Dominic had defamed him to professional contacts. Anonymous calls were made to Dominic's firm, suggesting he was misusing company resources for personal vendettas. Lily's school received a letter questioning Dominic's emotional stability around children. Most disturbingly, Lily reported during their visitation that Mommy and Uncle Neil say you're sick in your head and need special medicine to not be angry all the time. This parental alienation crossed a line that Dominic couldn't tolerate. That evening, he activated the final phase of his plan, one he'd hoped wouldn't be necessary. First, he contacted Richard Montgomery again. "They're poisoning Lily against me. I need your help." Richard, devastated by his daughter's actions, agreed to testify if needed about her statements and behavior. As a respected former judge, his testimony would carry significant weight. Next, Dominic reached out to Meredith Weiss, who had continued investigating Vanessa's financial activities. What she'd uncovered was worse than expected. "The tax fraud isn't just aggressive deductions," Meredith explained, showing him documents. "She's been falsifying income sources to justify the increased funds from the diverted marital assets. If the IRS investigates, we're talking potential criminal charges." Finally, Dominic approved Sloan's request to depose 3 of Vanessa's colleagues from the hospital. Individuals who had received the anonymous concerned emails about Dominic's mental state, supposedly from other staff members, but actually traced back to Neil's laptop. The depositions revealed something unexpected. Vanessa had been falsifying portions of her work history. Her promotion to hospital administration had actually been a lateral move following complaints about missing prescription medications from her department, complaints that had been quietly resolved without formal charges. Armed with this new information, Sloan filed an amended petition requesting immediate primary custody for Dominic, supervised visitation only for Vanessa, a psychiatric evaluation of both Vanessa and Neil, freezing of all remaining joint assets, an expedited trial date. The evening before the emergency hearing, Dominic received a call from an unexpected source, Gregory Walsh, Vanessa's former attorney. "I shouldn't be calling you," Walsh began, sounding troubled. "But there are ethical lines I won't cross, even for clients." "What's happening?" Dominic asked, instantly alert. "I can't give specifics. Attorney-client privilege still applies. But if I were you, I'd ensure your daughter doesn't leave the country with her mother or uncle. And I'd check if either of them has recently acquired new passports." The implication was clear. Vanessa and Neil were planning to flee with Lily. Dominic immediately contacted Sloan, who arranged for an emergency order restricting Lily's travel and flagging her passport in the system. He then called Richard Montgomery. "I need to see Lily now," Dominic explained the situation. "Can you get Vanessa out of the house for an hour?" Richard agreed without hesitation. "I'll tell her I need to discuss something about tomorrow's hearing. I'll pick her up in 20 minutes. When Vanessa left with her father, Dominic went to the house. Using his court order for access, he entered to find Neil there, supposedly watching Lily while Vanessa was out. "What the hell are you doing here?" Neil demanded, blocking the hallway to Lily's room. "I'm here to see my daughter," Dominic replied calmly. "Step aside. You have no right." "I have every right," Dominic interrupted, showing the court order. "And unlike you, I'm not planning to kidnap her to another country." Neil's face drained of color. "That's insane. You're paranoid. Then you won't mind explaining the 2 one-way tickets to Mexico City found in Vanessa's email? Or the rental car reserved in Guadalajara?" Dominic was taking a calculated risk based on Walsh's warning, but Neil's expression confirmed he'd hit the mark. "You've been in her email again," Neil accused. "That's illegal. Actually, I have a court order permitting access to all shared accounts as part of discovery." Another calculated bluff. "Now move, or I call the police and have you arrested for custodial interference." Neil stepped aside, seething. "This isn't over, Dom. For you, it is." Dominic entered Lily's room to find her awake and scared. "Daddy? Why are you and Uncle Neil fighting?" Dominic sat on her bed. "Sweetheart, I need you to pack some things. You're going to stay with me tonight." "But Mommy said—" "I know, but there's been a change of plans." Dominic helped her gather essentials while explaining in age-appropriate terms that the judge had said she should stay with him for a few days. As they left, Neil stood watching with impotent rage. "You'll regret this, Dom. I promise you that." "Take it up with the judge tomorrow," Dominic replied, ushering Lily to his car. That night, safely in Dominic's hotel suite, Lily finally relaxed enough to reveal what had been planned. "Mommy and Uncle Neil said we were going on a special vacation tomorrow. Just the 3 of us. They said you knew about it, but couldn't come because of work." Her innocent disclosure confirmed Dominic's worst fears. He held her close. "That's not happening anymore. Tomorrow we're going to see a judge who's going to help us figure out what happens next." "Are you mad at Mommy?" Lily asked sleepily. Dominic chose his words carefully. "I'm sad about some choices Mommy has made, but I'm not mad at you ever. And no matter what happens, I'll always be your dad." When Lily finally fell asleep, Dominic called Sloan with the new information. Then he contacted Detective Martinez, who agreed to meet them at the courthouse the next morning. The stage was set for the final confrontation. Chapter 7, Judgment Day. Judge Eleanor West's courtroom fell silent as she studied the documents before her. At 72, West was a legend in family court, known for her penetrating intelligence and unwavering focus on children's welfare above all other considerations. On one side of the courtroom sat Dominic with Sloan and Sean. On the other, Vanessa looked pale and frightened beside Belinda Morris. Neil was conspicuously absent. "Before we begin," Judge West announced, "I want to address the emergency motion filed this morning regarding alleged plans to remove the minor child from jurisdiction. her stern gaze fixed on Vanessa. Mrs. Foster, can you explain why one-way tickets to Mexico were purchased in your name and your daughter's? Morris leapt to her feet. Your Honor, my client categorically denies any intent to flee jurisdiction. Those tickets were for a planned vacation that was fully disclosed. To whom was it disclosed, Counselor? Judge West interrupted. Not to the child's father, according to the record before me. Not to this court, despite explicit orders restricting the child's travel. She turned to Dominic. Mr. Foster, when did you become aware of these travel plans? Last night, Your Honor, Dominic replied. A concerned party alerted me to the possibility, which my daughter then confirmed when I exercised my court-ordered visitation. Judge West nodded. I see. And where is Neil Foster today? Morris shifted uncomfortably. We're not representing Mr. Neil Foster, Your Honor. His whereabouts are not our concern. They're mine, announced Detective Martinez, entering the courtroom. Neil Foster was apprehended at O'Hare International Airport this morning, attempting to board a flight to Mexico City with a significant amount of cash and Mrs. Foster's jewelry in his possession. The courtroom erupted in murmurs until Judge West's gavel restored order. Detective, is Mr. Foster being charged? The judge inquired. Not at this time, Your Honor. He's being held for questioning regarding the attempted removal of assets subject to the temporary restraining order in this case. Judge West turned her penetrating gaze to Vanessa. Mrs. Foster, were you aware of your brother-in-law's travel plans? Vanessa glanced desperately at her attorney before responding. I may have discussed possible vacations with him, Your Honor. I see. Judge West's tone made clear she saw everything. In light of these developments, I'm prepared to rule on the emergency motions before me. What followed was a systematic dismantling of Vanessa's position. Judge West granted Dominic temporary full custody, restricted Vanessa to supervised visitation, ordered psychological evaluations for both Vanessa and Neil, and froze all remaining assets pending final judgment. Furthermore, she concluded, I am deeply troubled by evidence of attempted parental alienation and potential flight risk. Mrs. Foster will surrender her passport and that of the minor child to the court immediately. The court will also appoint a guardian ad litem to represent the child's interests going forward. As the hearing concluded, Dominic felt no triumph. Only relief that Lily was safe and the worst of Vanessa's and Neil's schemes had been thwarted. Outside the courtroom, Morris approached Sloan and Dominic. My client is prepared to discuss settlement terms. Sloan smiled thinly. I believe your client's negotiating position has been somewhat compromised today. Perhaps, Morris conceded, but a protracted court battle benefits no one, especially not the child. Dominic considered this. Despite everything, she was right about one thing. Continuing this war would only cause more trauma for Lily. Have your client meet mine tomorrow, Sloan replied. We'll discuss possibilities. That evening, as Dominic helped Lily with her homework in their hotel suite, soon to be exchanged for their home, which the court had granted him exclusive use of pending final judgment, his phone rang with Richard Montgomery's number. Dominic, I'm with Vanessa, Richard said, his voice heavy. She wants to talk. Not about the case. Morris would have a fit, but as Lily's parents. Would you be willing? After ensuring Lily was settled with a movie and room service dinner, Dominic met Vanessa and her father at a quiet restaurant near the hotel. She looked exhausted, defeated. I know you hate me, she began. I don't hate you, Dominic replied honestly. I don't recognize you anymore, but I don't hate you. What happened today? She stopped, recalibrating. Neil was acting on his own. I never agreed to him taking those things. Dominic didn't believe her, but arguing would serve no purpose. Why did you want to talk? For Lily. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Whatever happens between us, she loves both her parents. I don't want her growing up in a war zone. Neither do I, Dominic agreed. But that requires truth, Vanessa. No more manipulation. No more poisoning her against me. I can change, she insisted. I've realized how far things went off track, how much I've lost. She reached for his hand, which he carefully moved away. We could try again, Dom, for Lily's sake. Richard looked pained at his daughter's transparent attempt at manipulation, but remained silent. No, Vanessa, Dominic said quietly. That's not happening. But we can try to be decent co-parents if you're genuinely willing. She withdrew, mask slipping to reveal a flash of cold anger before smoothing into resignation. Then I want a fair settlement. One that acknowledges my contributions to our marriage. That's between the lawyers now, Dominic replied, standing. But if you're sincere about Lily's welfare, demonstrate it. Stop the alienation attempts. Commit to staying in Chicago. Take responsibility for your actions. As he left, Richard followed him outside. She's still my daughter, and I love her, the older man said. But she needs consequences. Don't let her manipulate you into concessions she doesn't deserve. I won't, Dominic promised. But Lily deserves parents who can at least be civil to each other. The next day, the settlement discussions began in earnest. With her position severely weakened, Vanessa agreed to terms far closer to Dominic's original demands. Primary physical custody to Dominic, with Vanessa receiving regular visitation. Joint legal custody with a tie-breaking provision giving Dominic final say in cases of disagreement. A requirement that Vanessa remain within 50 miles of Chicago while Lily was a minor. No alimony. Division of assets accounting for Vanessa's prior diversion of funds. Dominic retaining the family home. Both parents required to attend co-parenting counseling. The most difficult issue remained Neil. Vanessa insisted she should be free to maintain whatever relationship she chose with him, while Dominic was adamant that Neil's influence not extend to Lily. He deliberately undermined my relationship with my daughter, Dominic argued during a particularly heated negotiation session. He conspired to take her out of the country illegally. He cannot be part of her life. The compromise, reluctantly accepted by Vanessa, was that Neil would have no contact with Lily without Dominic's express written permission, a provision that could be revisited after 2 years if Neil completed therapy and demonstrated changed behavior. By the end of the week, the settlement was finalized. What had begun as a vicious court battle ended with signatures on documents and the formal dissolution of a 15-year marriage. As Dominic signed the final page, he felt no sense of victory, only the weight of what had been lost and the responsibility of what remained, raising Lily in the aftermath of this upheaval. Chapter 8: Aftershocks. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Dominic and Lily had established a new routine in their home. The initial transition had been difficult. Lily's confusion and emotional volatility required patience and consistency, but gradually, stability returned. Vanessa maintained her visitation schedule with surprising reliability. The supervised visits had been lifted after her psychological evaluation found no immediate concerns, though the therapist noted narcissistic tendencies and difficulty accepting responsibility for her actions. Neil had left Chicago after the court proceedings, reportedly moving to Seattle. He and Dominic had not spoken since the confrontation in their home the night Dominic took Lily to safety. Professional consequences had emerged for both Vanessa and Neil. The hospital administration, concerned about potential liability from Vanessa's documented pattern of deception, had placed her on probationary status. Neil, whose architectural license was already compromised, found himself essentially unemployable in the Midwest after word of his behavior spread through professional circles. Dominic himself faced challenges rebuilding. Though his firm had supported him through the divorce crisis, the emotional toll had affected his work. He took a brief sabbatical to focus on Lily and his own recovery, working with a therapist to process the betrayal and forge a path forward. Most surprising was the realignment of relationships around them. Vanessa's parents, Richard and Margaret, maintained their close relationship with Dominic and Lily, often visiting for Sunday dinners. Initially to Vanessa's fury, though she eventually accepted the reality that her parents refused to sever ties with their granddaughter or former son-in-law. Friends had similarly redistributed their loyalties, many shocked by the revelations about Vanessa's and Neil's behavior. Some mutual friends pulled away from both Dominic and Vanessa, uncomfortable with taking sides. Others rallied around Dominic, offering support and practical help with Lily. Meredith Weiss, whose forensic accounting had proved crucial to Dominic's case, became a particularly close friend. Her intelligence and straightforward manner provided a refreshing contrast to the emotional chaos of the past year. Though Dominic wasn't ready for any romantic involvement, her presence in his and Lily's life became a source of stability. 6 months after the divorce, Dominic received an unexpected email from Neil. "Dom, I've been in therapy. Part of my recovery is making amends where possible. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I need to acknowledge what I did. Since childhood, I've resented your success, your confidence, everything that came so naturally to you and so difficultly to me. When my career imploded, the resentment turned toxic. Vanessa and I connected over our shared feelings of being overlooked in your shadow. What started as commiseration evolved into something destructive. That doesn't excuse what we did. Nothing could. The plot to take Lily, the financial deception, the attempts to destroy your reputation, it was all inexcusable. I'm not asking to be part of your life again. I understand that bridge is burned. I just wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused and am trying to become someone who wouldn't do those things. Neil." Dominic read the email multiple times, emotions cycling between anger, skepticism, and a small, unexpected flicker of relief that his brother acknowledged the reality of what had happened. He saved the email, but didn't respond. Some wounds were too deep for words to bridge, at least for now. Meanwhile, Lily continued to adapt and heal. With the help of her therapist, she gradually came to understand the situation in age-appropriate terms. The parental alienation attempts had largely failed. Her natural bond with Dominic had proven resilient against Vanessa's and Neil's manipulations. One evening, as Dominic tucked her in, Lily asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, are you still sad about Mommy?" Dominic considered how to answer honestly while remaining appropriate. "I'm sad about what happened to our family," he finally said. "But I'm not sad every day anymore. And I'm never, ever sad that I have you." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I heard Grandpa tell Grandma that Mommy made the biggest mistake of her life." The echo of his daughter's innocent question that had started this entire ordeal wasn't lost on Dominic. How differently he might have responded had he dismissed her words that night, had he confronted Vanessa immediately, had he not discovered the full extent of the betrayal. "Everyone makes mistakes, Lily," he said carefully. "What matters is how we learn from them. Is that why you don't hate Mommy? Because she's learning from her mistake?" "I don't hate Mommy because hating someone hurts you more than it hurts them," Dominic explained. "And because no matter what happened between us, she gave me you, and you're the best thing in my life." This answer seemed to satisfy her. As she drifted off to sleep, Dominic reflected on how fundamentally his worldview had changed. The man he'd been a year ago, trusting, perhaps naive, certain of his place in the world, was gone. In his place was someone more cautious, but also more resilient, more attuned to protecting what mattered most. 8 months after the divorce, Vanessa requested a meeting outside their co-parenting counseling sessions. They met at a neutral coffee shop, the awkwardness between them still palpable, but less raw than before. "I've been offered a position at Northwestern Memorial," she said without preamble. "Better salary, more responsibility. Still within the radius specified in our agreement." "Congratulations," Dominic replied, meaning it. Vanessa working and advancing in her career was better for everyone, including Lily. "I've also been seeing someone," she continued, watching for his reaction. "Not Neil, a doctor from my department. I wanted you to hear it from me before Lily mentions it." Dominic nodded, surprised to feel nothing beyond mild curiosity. "Is it serious?" "It could be." She hesitated. "I've told him everything. About what happened, what I did. He knows I'm in therapy working on my issues." "That's good, Vanessa." The response was automatic, but not insincere. She studied him for a moment. "You've moved on, haven't you? Not just dating someone else, but actually moved past us." "I had to," Dominic said simply. "For Lily. For myself. I haven't," Vanessa admitted, a flash of the vulnerability he'd once loved crossing her face. "I keep replaying everything, wondering where it all went wrong. If I hadn't let Neil influence me." "Neil didn't make you do anything," Dominic interrupted, not unkindly. "You made your choices. So did I. Now we live with them." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, Dom. Not just for getting caught. For who I became, who I let myself become. It wasn't full accountability, perhaps that would never come, but it was something, a recognition, however limited, of her role in their destruction. I appreciate that, Dominic said. And I hope things work out with the new job, with the new relationship. Lily deserves happy, healthy parents. As they parted ways, Dominic felt a weight lifting, not completely, but noticeably. The past would always be there, its lessons etched into his DNA. But the future remained unwritten, full of possibilities he was now free to explore. Chapter 9. Rebuilding. 1 year after the innocent question that had unraveled his life, Dominic stood in the backyard of his home, truly is now, in both legal and emotional terms, watching Lily chase fireflies in the summer twilight. Her laughter, once rare in the aftermath of a divorce, had returned in full force, a testament to children's remarkable resilience when provided stability and love. The year had brought unexpected developments. Dominic's career had not just recovered but flourished. His firm had made him a full partner, impressed by his handling of professional responsibilities despite personal turmoil. The promotion came with greater creative control and financial security that benefited both him and Lily. Vanessa had settled into her new position at Northwestern Memorial and maintained consistent, if somewhat formal, co-parenting cooperation. Her relationship with the doctor had progressed to engagement, which had initially triggered some confusion for Lily, but had ultimately provided additional stability in her mother's household. Neil remained in Seattle, sending occasional updates on his therapy progress and career rebuilding efforts. Dominic had finally responded to one such email with a brief but civil message, not offering forgiveness, but acknowledging Neil's efforts to change. For Lily's sake, he was willing to leave the door slightly ajar for eventual reconciliation, though true trust seemed impossible to restore. Most significantly, Dominic's friendship with Meredith had evolved gradually into something deeper. They had moved cautiously, both aware of the delicate balance required when children were involved. Lily, after initial wariness, had warmed to Meredith's straightforward kindness and genuine interest in her world. Tonight, they were hosting a small gathering. Meredith, Richard and Margaret Montgomery, and a few close friends who had stood by Dominic through the worst of times. It was a celebration of sorts, marking not just the year's passage, but the construction of a new life from the rubble of the old. As guests arrived and conversation flowed, Dominic found himself on the deck with Richard, watching as Meredith helped Lily capture fireflies in a jar, explaining how they produce their light. "She's good with Lily," Richard observed. "She is," Dominic agreed. "Patient, honest, no games." The older man nodded. "You know, when Vanessa was a child, I worried constantly about protecting her from harm. I never considered I should worry about the harm she might cause." He sighed. "Parents want to believe the best of their children." "Understand that now," Dominic said, watching Lily's joy as a firefly lit up in her jar before she released it. "There's nothing I wouldn't do to protect her." "You already proved that," Richard reminded him, "when it mattered most." The evening progressed with easy conversation and shared meals, so different from the tense family gatherings of the marriage's final years. As twilight deepened into night, Lily fell asleep on the porch swing, exhausted from play and excitement. Dominic carried her upstairs to bed, this routine now a cherished anchor in both their lives. As he tucked her in, Lily stirred slightly. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy now?" The question, like so many from children, cut straight to the heart of things. Dominic considered it seriously. "Yes," he answered truthfully. "I am happy now." "Me too," Lily whispered before drifting back to sleep. Downstairs, the gathering was winding down. Meredith lingered, helping clear dishes and put away leftovers with the comfortable familiarity of someone finding their place. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, noticing Dominic's contemplative mood. "Just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago," he replied. "How completely life can change from a single question." "For better and worse," Meredith agreed. "Though I have to say, from my perspective, some good came from it all." She smiled, the directness that had first drawn him to her evident in her gaze. "Definite bright spots," Dominic concurred, pulling her close. Later, after Meredith had gone home, they were taking this new phase slowly, mindful of Lily's adjustment. Dominic sat alone on his deck. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights, a reminder of how beauty persisted even in darkness. He thought about the journey of the past year, from betrayal to survival to rebuilding. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. It had transformed into something else. Wisdom, perhaps, or simply a deeper appreciation for genuine connection. His phone buzzed with a text for Vanessa. Lily forgot her science project materials here. I could drop them off tomorrow before school. A year ago, such a message would have triggered a cascade of emotions. Anger, suspicion, hurt. Now it was simply co-parenting logistics. Progress. Dominic typed a brief reply. Thanks. We'll be ready at 7:30. He set the phone down, gazing up at the stars. The question that had started everything. Daddy, why does Mommy call you her biggest mistake when you're not here? No longer held power over him. What Vanessa considered her biggest mistake had become his unexpected liberation. From the ashes of betrayal, he had built something new. Not perfect, not without challenges, but authentic and, increasingly, filled with joy. As he finally went inside, locking up the home that sheltered his sleeping daughter, Dominic recognized that true revenge hadn't come from the legal victories or the exposed deceptions. It had come from refusing to be destroyed by betrayal, from building a life so full and genuine that the people who had tried to destroy him became increasingly irrelevant to his happiness. That, he realized, was the most profound victory of all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.